Welcome back to Realize Your Potential with Mike and Travis. We are here for what is sadly our last installment with Danielle Slaton on Managing Your Mindset. Thank you so much, Danielle. Like, I can't thank you enough for joining the show. The insight from episodes 1 and 2 were amazing. Please go back and watch them. If you didn't watch them the last 2 weeks, please jump right in and get to those because they're amazing. This week, we're going to talk a little bit about finishing up kind of, okay, we've done these exciting things. We're in the Olympics. Go on to talk about your experience, being the number 1 pick and moving into professional soccer and what that was like. But then really for me, which I think is really interesting, is how do you transition now into what I would call civilian life, right? No longer being the athlete on the field. And how do you keep that excitement, that passion that you exhibited on the field? How does that transfer into regular life afterwards, right? Please like, share, and subscribe, everybody. These are the type of shows and conversations that really make a difference in people's lives. So really, thank you for watching, and please share this stuff. So here we go, Danielle. So you've played in the Olympics. You're won a national championship. Thought you weren't going to. It was a nail biter. You had to manage your mindset there. What is that like now going into the professional ranks, and what was that whole experience like?
I think the first thing to note was that I was a professional in women's sports when it was in its infancy, right? I joke that, we don't like to talk about money, but I'll throw this number out there because I just think it's funny. So I was the number 1 overall draft pick in 2002 for a women's professional league, and my salary was $20,000. And so, you compare that to, I don't even know who was the number 1 pick in, football that year. You could argue women's soccer and football, different sports, but probably the most popular sport at the time for men and the most popular sport at the time for women. Right, the salary was drastically different. And so there was a pride that and an excitement that came with getting to be a pro athlete, right? When I started college, that wasn't a career path for me. That wasn't a choice for me. I didn't see that as a realistic possibility. I wanted to be a doctor when I started at Santa Clara. That's what I thought was gonna happen. I was gonna go play college, and after college, I was gonna go on to my next career. But I got to prolong that a little bit to continue getting to play. And so it was exciting to be a part of it, but it was also a hustle. I wasn't making a lot of money. I had to still finish school. I had to still find other ways to work and to bring in income to be able to survive. And I'm happy to see that it's come a long way. And you see, what's happened with the women's who have won the World Cup in 2015 and 19, and the arguments around equal pay and being able to make a living wage. So I'm proud to feel like I was a small piece in that puzzle along the way. But from a mindset perspective, it was awesome to be able to continue my joy and what I saw as a fun experience and a game that I got to continue as a job for a little while after college.
Yeah. $20,000, that's
different, right? Like, I don't think people see that.
And this is not what this episode is about, but I'll tell you, like, anyone who's mad about that, man, go support women's sports, right? Like, you go to the games, watch it on TV. Me and my daughter, we watch the WNBA. We watch women's soccer. Like, we support it. We don't just complain about the standard where it is. Like, yes, we have to start getting towards equal pay, but we've got to go out and support women's sports because it's amazing. It's fantastic. It's some of the best soccer in the world. Our U.S. women's national team has really been the most visible soccer part of our whole United States experience for the last, for a long time. And as I've watched soccer and thought about soccer. So go support.
Go buy the gear.
The most sold Nike jersey of all time, U.S. Women's National Team. How about that?
There we go.
Mm-hmm.
So Nike, kick some dough down. You know what I'm saying? Get our girls paid out here.
So man, what's that mindset like? Having to say, okay, I'm a professional at this, but I'm not getting paid that much. I got to go hustle. Can you dive a little bit deeper into how you managed that mindset?
I don't know. I guess I think it was just normal. Like, we didn't know any different for women's sports at the time. That's just the reality of it. So,
and that's sad, by the way, that we accepted that's acceptable, right?
Yeah, but I mean, you know, it's progress, and progress doesn't happen in a straight line or always as fast as we wanted to. But I would say just learning to be a professional, and really learning the art of your craft, and spending the time to watch video, to work out, to do all of the little things that you had started to do in college and at a younger age, but really understanding what it means to be professional, and do all of the work was a transition, you know, from the college game to the professional game that I learned. And I got to be surrounded by, quite frankly, the most badass women in the world. And I got to learn from them. And it's awesome feeling to be able to call some of the most successful women in the world my friends. And I feel like when I left the game, it was a little bit of a shock for me, because I thought all women and all people were built that way. But I realized that we're all cut from the same slightly demented cloth. And so I feel like I just was in an environment where I'd found my tribe in a way. I'd found people who thought like me and wanted to work like me and were as competitive and as passionate about the game of soccer as I was. And so there was a joy in that and an ease in that. I liked the work. I liked putting in the effort. And so it was just a really, really special time. And I would say, you know, my first couple of years before I had to deal with injury and before I was dealing with a lot of stuff, it was just a real high in that way. I loved what I did. I loved that I got to do it. I thought it was going to last forever. So I was probably a little bit naive in that way and didn't prepare for the end in the way that I should have or could have. But at the time I was riding high and loving life. And it was probably the easiest to have the mindset that you guys keep talking about, because things were going really well.
Yeah. And maybe share with us sort of how things started to transition out of professional sports, right? And maybe, you know, and again, I don't know what I don't know in terms of how did injuries play a part of that, or I don't know. I would say just take us there in terms of the mindset and maybe what that was like.
Yeah. It's funny because I always, when people ask me what I'm most proud of in my career and in looking back, I always say the thing that I'm most proud of is learning how to not be a soccer player anymore. And for me, in 2003, I'd been a pro for a couple of years. I'd, you know, gotten to play in the World Cup and play in the Olympics and experience all of these great things, was drafted really high. And one day I woke up and my knee was just a little swollen. Like, nothing crazy, but just a little weird. Couldn't really explain it. Went to the trainer, iced it, you know, did all the usual stuff. Long story short, I started getting, basically they look like little cavities, but getting holes in my cartilage in my knee. And so your bone starts rubbing up against each other, and it's really, really painful when you don't have that extra cushion in your knee and your bone starts rubbing up against it. For me, I was lucky. It was never a ligament issue. I was never like, didn't tear my ACL, didn't have any stability issues. Like, I could play. It was just a matter of pain, which was a really tough place to be in, because I would have the trainers and the doctor say, well, yeah, it's gonna hurt, so it's really just a matter of what you can tolerate. And so I kept having to like dig deeper and being like, okay, can I suffer through this? Can I suffer through this? Can I get through this? The doctors say I'm okay, but it hurts like hell. Like, what am I supposed to do? So I was in this no man's land for a while. And then right at that time, as I was getting injured, the league that I was playing in folded. And so if you weren't playing for the national team, there was no more professional team to play for. And so there was kind of no place for me to go because I wasn't at the tip top elite level because I was struggling with injury. So if you weren't in the top 25 in the country, like where else are you going to play? There was no place to go. And playing overseas wasn't really as much of an option at the time as compared to it is now. So I kind of just got lost in the shuffle of all of that. And I was trying to fight it. I was going through rehab. I was doing all of these things. But I just never could get back. And so my career just kind of faded to black, quietly, uneventfully. The way it worked at the national team is you got invited into a camp and you kept getting invited back with obviously the ultimate goals of getting invited to these major world events. And I got invited to a camp or two, and then just one less, and then just one less, and then I just didn't get the call anymore. And that was it. And so it was really hard for me. I mean, I think it was probably the hardest time of my life. I was 25, and I remember watching graduation speeches. It was like spring or summertime, and all these graduation speeches were going on. And I remember hearing all of the time, like, find your passion and you'll never work a day in your life. Find your passion. And I remember sitting there watching and being like, I freaking found my passion and it got taken away from me, and I'm not as passionate about anything else. Like, can you tell me what I'm supposed to do about that in a graduation speech? Because that's really not helpful to me. Like, I would love to find my passion so I don't have to work a day in my life, but how do you do that? And so I think I really struggled. The other thing I really struggled with during that time was I had learned all of these really, really incredibly powerful and helpful skills as an athlete, right? I'd learned how to work hard. I'd learned how to be disciplined. I'd learned how to suffer through struggle. I'd learned how to sacrifice for the team. I'd learned all of these incredible skills. And the problem was that I was trying to apply those to my feelings, which those skills weren't helpful, right? Sucking it up, working harder, suffering didn't really help when you're depressed about not being able to find your next career step and not wanting to really get out of bed because you don't get to do what you love anymore and it's not in your control, and you tried as hard as you can and you don't get to do that anymore. Somebody else made that choice for you. And I think one of the things that I wish I could go back and do different, and one of the biggest lessons I learned, was that I couldn't outwork my feelings. I had to feel them. I had to grieve, quite frankly, the loss of my career, and I had to ask for help. And I didn't do those things. And it took me a really long time to figure out how to find my way out of that darkness, if you will. And my boyfriend then, husband now, I kind of was like, God, I was miserable. Why did you stay with me? Because I was a mess. But he was great. He kind of, he was wonderful and supportive and loving, but also kind of kicked me in the pants in a way. And I remember complaining to him one morning, and I said, what am I supposed to do? I don't know what to do. I'm not passionate about anything. And he looked at me and he said, you know what you do, Danielle? Real people just choose something. You choose something. And you walk through a door and you pick yourself up and you walk through a door and you think, this is kind of interesting to me. I don't know that much about it, but it's kind of interesting. I'm going to try this. And you walk through the door and you give it your best shot. And either there's another door on the other side of that door, or you figure out that wasn't the right door to go in. You turn around, you walk back out, and you choose something else. You just keep choosing and you just keep putting one step in front of the other. And eventually, with all of the skills that you have, you're going to find something that fits. And it took me a really long time. I would say it took me years kind of to go from my last day of playing to finding peace and finding hope and passion and finding my way eventually back to the game in another capacity. But that's what it was. It was just little baby steps. And at that time, I did all of this crazy stuff. I was like, oh, okay, I like fitness. Let me learn how to be a fitness instructor. So I became a spinning and a rowing instructor. And I'd always loved being in nature and being outside and flowers. And so I learned how to become a florist, and like I can make a mean bridal bouquet, let me tell you.
I did not know that.
And like this is how I got into television, right? Somebody said, oh, you can talk about soccer on TV. And I said, sure, I'll give that a go. And so eventually, that's how I got into commentary and television. So it was a tough time. It was an ugly time. It was a messy time. But I always say that the thing I'm most proud of is leaving the game and learning how to be a successful human and outside of soccer, learning how to not be a soccer player anymore, and being really proud of what I accomplished, but also knowing that I have a lot more to give to the world than just kicking a soccer ball, and that I get to do that now.
Yeah, right on.
Amazing.
Right on.
That story is there are so many people in the pandemic right now dealing with loss, dealing with issues, dealing with challenges, that your story, dealing with change, that your story resonates with, right? Like their whole world changed and they had no control over it. There was nothing that they could do. They couldn't work harder. They couldn't just bring it more. Just didn't exist, right? And how the interesting thing about that is you're like, yeah, and it took me a while. Like I wasn't good. Like I didn't just bounce right back out of it, right? And Mike and I talk a lot about, there's always going to be peaks and valleys, right? The question is not whether you're going to fail or things are going to go wrong, but it's how long can you stay in that. Is it going to become a canyon, right? Because it's going to be there forever, or are you going to try to bounce back up as quickly as possible? And you said it, having people around you who care about you that help you get out of that sooner. But it sounds like he was also a support system and gave you the space to feel the way you were feeling and be supportive. And then eventually he's like, okay, it's time, right? And that's what you need as well. So, as you're going, as you're listening to this and you might be going through similar challenges, I encourage you to understand that your success is on the other side of that door. Right? And maybe you're not ready to take that step today, but let's start thinking about when you can start taking those steps to go find that success. And it's out there, and it may be very difficult to find that door, but you got to keep trying, and you got to keep pushing, and you got to use the people around you, as we've talked about in multiple episodes, to help guide you through all of that.
That story was so insightful. So thank you for sharing that.
I do.
Sure. And
go ahead, Mike.
Just real quick, another reflection is, it also sounds like acknowledging what was going on. So you talked about mourning, not being a player anymore, and sort of grieving that process and sort of understanding what was getting in the way also seemed like it helped you propel forward, and Travis and I talk about that in terms of, you got to do the work, you have to do these things, but also try to identify and have introspection around like what's getting in the way, so you can sort of support the people who are trying to support you with supporting you.
Yeah, totally. Right. I mean, and I feel like for me too, at the time, it was the first time that I ever went to go see a counselor and get help, right? Like, cause I didn't have the tools. I just didn't have them. I needed somebody else to reflect those tools or help me find them. I felt like for a long time, I was like in a dark room trying to feel for the door, and I couldn't find the doorknob. And then with the support of my boyfriend, with, going to see a counselor and going to get help in that way, like every now and then, like the light would come on for a second, but then it would go back off. And then the light would come on a little longer and then it would go back off. And so I just started to fill my toolbox with different tools that enabled me to, as you said, Mike, like move forward and to find that door and to take that next step in my career. And then like, once I kind of came out of that fog and came out of that place, the tools that I had, like I had so many more tools than the average person, right? I had all the tools that I learned as an athlete. I had all of these new skills and tools that I learned. And I will never forget, I was working in a corporate job in Chicago, and we were going through layoffs. And I remember sitting in my cube and everyone's panicking, right? Because, you know, if you've ever been in a situation where layoffs are happening, right? Like it's spread and there's like a weird vibe going on.
Everybody's talking about it. Yep.
It's terrible, right? The whole day is terrible. And you don't know if you're going to get called in. And if you get called in, you know, you're going to pack up your box and pack up your office and go. And I remember sitting there and working, and we had a ton of work to do still. And I just remember thinking, I've gotten cut from the Olympics. Like, I can find a new job. This is okay. Like, I can deal with this. And people around me, you know, were hysterical and hadn't been in that situation. And so I remember thinking in that moment specifically, like, man, like, I know I'm going to be okay because I know this feeling. Like, I know this stress. I know what's on the worst case scenario. I know what's in the best case scenario. And I'm going to be okay.
Yeah.
Mindset, girl.
Yeah, I mean that's
what it was. Yeah,
it makes the biggest difference in the world, and and
you prepare. It's funny. You prepared your whole life for the times that you would fail, not just the times that you would succeed, right? And I think that's what people have to understand is that all the prep work that you're doing today will prep you for failure, even more than it will prep you for success. Because failure will propel you to your next level of success if you learn from it, if you use it, if you use your tools. And, you know, we talk a ton about this. Like Mike is a therapist by trade, but he also is a coach. And I'm a coach. And one of the things that a lot of our clients will tell us is, before I did this experience, like I didn't think I needed one of those. Like I didn't think I need, you said you went to a counselor, right? Like I didn't think I need one of those. Like why would I ever need that, right? I have everything I need. But now that I'm working with you, I can't imagine not having you as a support system and then helping me build a support system beyond just you, but in my life, right? And I'm glad you shared that because it's really, really important to people to find professional help if they need it, but also find the resources in their general circle that can help them through tough times, right? And help and what the definition of tough times is different for everybody else, right? I mean, sometimes it's like I'm stuck at this level, and people will go, "Well, that level's amazing. Like, well, that's not stuck. Like, that's great." And some people are like, "No, that's not me. That's not my max potential. I'm not where I want to be." And so therefore it makes me sad. It makes me depressed. It makes me angry because I feel like I'm stuck in this glass ceiling, right? And if you look at our presidential election, you look at Kamala Harris, right? She was a senator, and most people would say, "Aren't you just happy with that? Be that for the rest of your life?" And she's like, "No, like there's another ceiling to crack, right? There's another place to be, and I want to go there, and I want to show every young biracial girl in the world that you can do whatever you want. You can be wherever you want." And so what your idea of stuck or needing help or seeking help may be different than somebody else's. You have to internalize that inside of yourself and understand what that point is for you. So
you used it's funny, you talked about failure. And it's funny, so I want to bring up two kind of like specific strategies that I use a lot. We talked a little bit about that in the previous episode and my mistake ritual. But it's funny, there's two things. I never use the word failure. And that's something that I like intentionally do. I don't fail, I win, or I learn, like period. That's it. I don't fail ever. And so I feel like that's a conscious thought process or a conscious mentality that I have. So I try not to use that word as much as possible. And then the other thing I always try to intentionally use, and my husband's probably gets frustrated about me because I always like call him on it, but I use the word yet. Anytime I say I can't do something, it's I can't do this yet. Or he'll say like, "Oh, I can't do this." And I'll be like, "Yet." So it's just this idea of like continuing to have like a growth mindset, right? Like I haven't been able to do this, but I can accomplish it if I continue to put forth the effort, or put forth, you know, the right strategies in order to make progress. And understanding that failure is really like the fertilizer I need to be able to grow. And so I don't actually fail at anything. I win, I accomplish what I want, I succeed, or I just need to find a way to tweak things, learn from it, and then try again.
There you go.
Amazing. Well,
This has been an amazing series. Thank you so much for jumping on. If you're watching right now, please, like I've been saying this, go rewatch these because there are so many golden nuggets in here that you can take away and apply to your life. Any last? I mean, Danielle, that was kind of great. If you have any last thing that you can give to someone that says, manage your mindset, like this is a key, other than all the million things you've already shared. But is there anything that you go, okay, I gotta add this.
I try to think about the things that have made me the most successful, and I would say it's probably two things. I would say one, focus on what I can control, and set goals, write them down, and look at them. Those are the two things I think that have really enabled me to be successful. And one is probably more action oriented, one's more mindset oriented. But those are the things I go back to time and time again in order to apply them to whatever I'm trying to accomplish, whether it be, my workout today or my career goals for the next 10 years.
Love it. Thank you so much.
Really, really thankful of the time that you shared with us. This has been dope.
Thanks, guys. It's been fun. Let's do it again sometime.
Yeah, absolutely. Maybe we can do it once the pandemic's over. We can do it all in person. Just hang out.
Share, subscribe. Please comment about any of the takeaways that you were taking away from any of the 3 episodes. We'd love to engage with you and talk to you a little bit about that. And if you are struggling and you need some help, please reach out to us at www.realizingnow.com. We're here to help. And we can give you a free assessment and then kind of go from there with a plan that might work for you. So let us know. Thank you. And see you next week.